This is the all-new Polygon Bend, a bike touted as being the ultimate adventure companion for backcountry wanderers and urban explorers alike. And while that could be said about many gravel bikes, the Bend goes about it in a different way, with outlying geometry, an aluminum frame, and some freakishly low prices. But what I want to find out is whether Polygon's slightly unconventional take on the modern gravel bike pays off, or if we're going to end up in a sluggish gray area between a racier drop bar bike and a more conventional XC mountain bike. So in this video, I'm going to start out by talking about this frame, then go into the 3 different models that it's sold as, and finally give you the GOAT's take as to who, if anybody, the Polygon Bend could be for. But before I do that, take a second to go ahead and subscribe to the 99 Spokes YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss any other first look videos like this. Now, on to this frame. The frame, more than any other component on a bike, speaks to how that bike will ride and ultimately who the bike was designed for. And one of the first things you notice when you look at the frame on the Bend is its material, aluminum. I have to assume the biggest reason for this is to lower the price point, which we'll talk about later, but also begins to speak to the intentions of the Bend, which leans much closer to the adventure side of the gravel spectrum than other racier bikes on the market today. And speaking of adventure, the Bend frame has a whopping 10 mounting points, and the R7 and R9X have an additional 6 on their carbon fork. And that alone makes the Bend a great contender if you're on the market for a bikepacking bike. And so does the relatively relaxed geometry, even when compared to other off-road focused gravel bikes. This size large here has a super short reach of just 396 millimeters. It also has a relatively tall stack of 629 millimeters and a very low mountain bike inspired seat tube that's just 495 millimeters long. Speaking of mountain bikes, it also has a slack 70.5 degree head tube angle that should make maneuvering through technical descents that much easier, and a relatively steep 73.5 degree seat tube angle. And those numbers, combined with this super short 45 millimeter stem, are gonna make the Bend feel a bit more like a hybrid bike or a cross-country mountain bike than it will a typical drop bar setup. And so it should come as no surprise that it also has clearance for some super big 700 by 50C tires. And speaking of getting off the beaten path, the frame also features dope graphics inspired off of a topo map and 3 distinct colors depending on which model you go with. So just by looking at the frame, I can already tell that this is much more than just a fat, tired road bike. And the spec choice on the R7, R9X, and V9X speak to that as well. The R7 is the cheapest way that you can get yourself a Polygon Bend, and that lists at just $1,499 US. The R7 has a SRAM Apex drivetrain with an 11 to 42 tooth cassette. It also features the SRAM Apex hydraulic disc brakes, 160mm rotors, and a 70mm Trans-X dropper seat post. Helping keep the price down on the R7 are the aluminum rims laced to some in-house hubs that are wrapped in 44mm V Rocketman tires. And to be honest, this R7 is the perfect bike if you're looking for a no-frills setup to just get out there and enjoy the outdoors. And for that reason, it's probably one of my favorite bikes in the lineup. The fact that Polygon invested their money into adding all those mounting points on the frame and using a 1x drivetrain and having a dropper post, again, speak to the fact that this bike was designed to be very off-road capable, and I think that spec matches the frame intentions well. But if you want something just a little bit fancier, Polygon's got you covered with the R9X, which retails for $2,999. The X in the R9X name signifies that this bike comes with the SRAM Access electronic shifting. Specifically, you're going to get the 12-speed Rival E-Tap system with a 10 to 44 tooth cassette. You're also going to get the electronically controlled RockShox Reverb Access dropper post with 75 millimeters of drop. The R9X features the same 44C V Rocketman tires, but this time they're wrapped around some carbon fiber Novatec rims, and those rims are laced to Novatec hubs as well. All in all, the R9X is a bit of an anomaly in my mind. It's got some really nice spec put on an aluminum frame, which you don't see in the gravel world very often. So again, if you're looking for just a rugged, do-it-all adventure bike, I think that could be a great option. For me personally though, I'm not sure if it's worth the extra $1,500, in other words, double the cost of the R7, just to get those carbon rims and electronic bits on this bike. But there still is one more bike in the Bend lineup, and that is the V9X, which retails for $3,699 US. Other than the tires and the fork, the spec on the V9X is actually identical to that of the R9X. But those tires and fork are gonna make a pretty dang big difference. And as you've already seen, the V9X switches out the carbon fiber rigid fork for a Fox TC32 with 40 millimeters of travel. The addition of a suspension fork on this model slackens the head tube by another ½ degree, making it that much more capable for off-road use. And speaking of riding it off the beaten path, the V9X also features some super wide 50C V-rail tires. All in all, if you're looking for an ultra sturdy, extra rugged gravel bike, then this V9X is definitely a killer option for you. But the last thing I want to do is talk a little bit about how the Bend compares to other gravel bikes on the market, starting with the R7. The $1,500 R7 is in direct competition with the Canyon Grizzle 7, which usually retails for $16.99 but is on sale right now for $14.99. Both of these bikes have very comparable specs, but the Bend does come with a dropper post and the Grizzle has some nicer wheels, which drop the weight of the Grizzle about ½ a pound below the Polygon Bend. The only other real difference between these two bikes is that the Bend has a bit more relaxed, or you could say trail-ready geometry than the Grizzle. And that really speaks to the difference between these bikes. If you want something that's gonna be extra capable off-road, then choose the Bend. If you want something that's gonna be a little bit lighter and a little bit better for more traditional gravel riding, then choose the Grizzle. The next comparison is going to put the R9X up against the Trek Checkpoint ALR 5 Axis. And while the Checkpoint is $100 less than the Bend, coming in at $28.99, the Bend does have significantly better spec. It has the Rival Access group set as opposed to the Apex on the Checkpoint. It also has a wireless dropper and, probably most significantly, carbon fiber wheels. Lastly, just like we saw before, the Bend does have more relaxed or off-road focused geometry than the Checkpoint. And all in all, I'm definitely going to give the win to the Bend. That nicer spec with the higher end drivetrain and brakes, electronic dropper seat post, and especially those carbon fiber wheels are well worth the extra $100 you're going to be paying over the Checkpoint. But we've got one more comparison to do, and this time we're going to be comparing the Bend V9X against the YT Zepter Core 3. Both of these bikes feature a suspension fork and very aggressive geometry. In fact, the Zepter has even more mountain bike inspired geometry than the Bend. The Zepter Core 3 is also $400 cheaper than the V9X, costing just $3,299. And that's really saying something, seeing as it has a carbon fiber frame and what many people consider to be a better fork, the RockShox Judy Explorer as opposed to the Fox 32. For this comparison, I am going to have to give the win to the Zepter. The fact that it's $400 cheaper and still has that carbon fiber frame and some arguably nicer components definitely elevates it in my book. The Zepter also has even more mountain bike focused geometry than the Bend. And seeing as the Bend is already on the off-road side of the spectrum when it comes to gravel bikes, I think if you're on the market for a bike like that, you might as well just go all the way and get something that's gonna feel that much more like a traditional cross-country mountain bike. That's not to say, however, that the Z9X is a bad bike. If you're looking primarily for a bike packing bike, you actually might prefer the aluminum frame with all those mounting points that you get from the Bend as opposed to the Zepter. So whether you're on the market for a multi-day bike packing adventure bike, or you just want the ultimate drop bar single track slayer, I think the Bend could be a great option for you. And I'm really excited to spend a little bit more time on this Bend R9X over the next couple months, and you'll be able to find my full review of this bike here on the YouTube channel once I'm done. If you have any more questions about the Bend that you would like me to try and answer while testing it out, then go ahead and drop those in the comments. And speaking of testing, I'm about to go change into some Lycra and take this thing out on its maiden voyage. So until the next video, be sure to remember that bikes are for everybody. Have fun out there.